Hi there. I wanted to follow through on something I said on Sunday about talking to your future self. And before I get further, if any of you are curious, because you pay attention to the background, that little mess back there is simply because my dog's lying underneath it. So if it looks like I don't make my bed, I do make my bed. She just has her own definition of what a made bed's supposed to be. She's buried under that. You may actually see her move before this is over. Who knows? I don't know. Anyway, um, what I mentioned in Sunday about talking to your future selves, and I had a delayed reaction because it dawned on me later that some of you might say something to the effect of, "How in the world do you ever do that? What is my future self? Am I getting weird and something out there someplace?" And it's like, not really. You've probably done this to some degree to yourself before, but maybe you haven't been aware of what you're doing. So I thought I'd talk about that today to clarify and explain what you can do, because this can be really beneficial to you. Now, first of all, I dare say that you've probably done something like this before when you've done something and you've looked at yourself and saying, "Oh, I'm going to mess up," or you've had this little thing, "Oh, you're just going to mess up," or some little voice that says you're messing up, or something like that. The other part to it is really to come right down to it. When you do something well, and you've done it well before, how many times when you start something can you think sort of like forward to finishing it and feeling really good because you know you're going to be successful? Now, for some obscure reason today, I thought about making a good lasagna. I have no idea where I get those ideas, they just come to me. So it's like, anyway. So let's just suppose, for the sake of this argument, you make a mean lasagna. When you start the lasagna, you probably have a sense, you can probably communicate, if you will, to your future self about how good that's going to be when it's over, because you're going to be so confident that it's going to go out well. And even if you do end up discovering that somehow you're short a noodle or something, that you're going to be able to figure out how to do something to make it turn out to be okay. Somewhere along the line, you might be doing something like talking to your future self, if you will, of saying, "Okay, I just realized I don't have the noodles. Now what do I do?" And have sort of like a thought process going in there about what you can do instead. Maybe some thoughts coming through to your head about, okay, what you've done this before, you can try this again, and you can make these changes, et cetera, et cetera. So you're communicating with yourself to some degree over what's happened before. But what you're actually kind of doing is looking at that successful self of yourself. That's going to get tiring, I suspect, here. But you're looking at the successful part of you that knows what you're doing and knows that if you just go through it and follow what you've known to do before, it's going to work out. Does that make sense? Now, maybe you're a runner and maybe you know that you're going to make it through to the end of the marathon, if that's the thing. Even though you feel like you're going to die, you know that you're going to do it because you can kind of see yourself at the end of it. If you've ever, say, like taken a test, some of you are great test takers and don't know how to write papers. Some of you like writing papers and are lousy test takers, but you can sort of look to the end of that item of whatever it is you're doing and get a sense of how successful you're going to be, right? This is kind of what I'm talking about when I say think in terms of your future self. This is, however, doing it in a sense more deliberately. So what's probably going on in some of your minds anyway is, "I've never been successful before. How can I talk to my future self and get the idea of being successful if I've never been successful?" I don't think that's true. You've been successful at something. Now, even if you want to quibble with me on that, we'll say, just, okay, for the sake of argument, you've never been successful at anything. Okay. Now, let's just say, for the sake of argument, can you be successful in getting through, say, listening to this recording? Probably do that. So you say, "Okay, I can be successful to that." You'll get through. Of course, if you decide you don't want to and you close it, okay, that's true. You make your own decisions and you figure out what you're going to do. But what you do is you take this in small steps. So let's do something more like, say, writing a paper. You're one of these people who, takes tests better than you do write your paper. And you've got this whole paper and it's like, I know, it's just so big and you can't figure out how to do it. Break this down in small steps, really, 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 really small steps. So you're looking at it and thinking, okay, I need to come up with a title for this, or I need to come up with a subject for this. I mean, we're talking really, really small steps. break it down into those little itty bitty things that you know how to do to get to that particular accomplishment. And then take each one of those and do it step by step so that you get your title, you find out what topic you're going to have. Maybe you find the first piece of item that you're going to do for research, whatever it's going to be. And so you can basically check those items off and say that you've already completed them. You develop a bit of success at doing those things because you can check them off your list, right? So that the next time you've got to do a paper, you can recognize the fact that you've done those things before and you've been successful. Now, notice I didn't say you wrote a fantastic paper. All I'm saying right now is that you're getting through and you're taking off those steps to accomplish the particular goal in this mind and that you've got in mind here is to do the paper. Once you get it down so that you've got the idea that, okay, I can do these steps, then you can go back and start working on each one of those steps to improve those steps. So maybe your hang up is finding the good research that you need to figure out where you can get all the information that you're going to need for the paper. You're looking at your future self in the sense that you've been successful before at finding research. Now you're just having to refine that. But you can tell yourself, look, you found other things before, you can find them this time too. Now, every paper you've ever written or anything you've ever had to write, whether it's a paper or a letter or anything else like that, assuming anybody writes letters anymore, you've accomplished and you've done. Now, you may have decided not to do it. You may have decided not to send it. You may have decided not to publish it, that is, send it or give it to anybody. But you've gone as far as you wanted to go and stopped, right? You made that decision. So you were successful up to a point. So that if you decide, well, I've always stopped before, you can say, well, I stopped before because I wanted to. This time I'm not going to. This time I'm going to go further and take another step. So that if you start looking at those steps that you can imagine yourself doing, you're beginning to talk to your future self. And if you do this over time with small things and build it up, you get to the point of recognizing when you've done something really successful, like making lasagna, and then you can begin to take that enthusiasm, that feeling of success, that feeling of confidence, and you can transfer it onto the other topic. Yes, exactly what it sounded like I said. You can take that feeling of success for making lasagna and go into the idea of figuring out how to write a paper. It's the feeling of success that you want to connect with. So that when you're saying, I can start something, I can finish it, I can carry through, and I can be successful. So that when you get to something successful, then you can do something else successful and something else successful until you begin to recognize that you can do successful things. And so what you're doing is you're talking to that self that's successful. It really doesn't matter whether or not you're making a lasagna or you're writing a paper, honest to goodness, at least not in my opinion anyway. So people might debate that with me, but we could argue that point. The idea is to recognize you when you're feeling that you're competent and you did things and you did it on your own and you knew what you were doing, more or less. Now, granted, there are going to be things in there that are all going to be unknowns because most of the things we do are never exactly the same thing as we've done before because it's always going to be an unknown. But you've still managed to be successful with the things you've done when you've faced different circumstances before. Let's, again, just for the sake of argument, take, in this case, you're a runner. You might have run several races or several marathons, but no marathon is going to be exactly the same as the last one, right? If you're going to write a paper, no paper is going to be the same thing as the last paper. If you bake a lasagna, it's not going to be the same lasagna as the last one you baked. Everything's going to have some changes. The key here is to think in terms of what it felt like to be accomplishing your specific goal and to be successful with what you're doing. So when you get to the point that you can say, I've been successful, I can do this, you're hooking up with your successful future self and then saying, okay, what do I need to do? And usually your future self is going to say something like along the line of follow the instructions or put one foot in front of the other and keep on going. But it's going to make much more sense to you when it comes from you than when somebody else tells you that. So you could ask a bunch of people, well, how do I make the lasagna or how do I write the paper? Just do things and you take each step, blah, blah, blah. And everybody's going to say easy for you to say. But what you're wanting to do is look for yourself when you yourself has been successful because you followed through those steps, because you know you can do that because you've done it before. I hope this makes sense. Because what you're really trying to do is just give yourself some confidence and recognize the fact that you've done things before, You've been successful before, even though you say you haven't been successful, you have been successful at something. And just recognize the fact that you can do things and sort of just hooking into that feeling of confidence and success so that you continue to do that for whatever it is you're doing right at this moment. I hope that makes sense. I hope that helps. If I confused you, if you think I'm full of baloney or something, let me know. Of course, if you think I'm full of baloney, you probably aren't going to listen to this anyway. But if you got some questions, holler at me and ask me and see what you have to say. I have to say about it. I hope this was helpful, especially for those of you who say I've never been successful. You can be successful. I know you can be. Okay, we'll chat with you later. Bye.